Well, this is Pops with another video, possibly to nowhere, but I'm going to try. That's right. Well, is it better this way? Yeah, I know. I'm on the wrong one. You'll have to live with it. Okay, just remember, left is right and right is left while we're viewing this. Okay, first off, there were two things I wanted to cover today, and I'm going to have to go back and look at it because I don't remember at this point. But the one was valve seats for you antiquers. Now, I know my glasses are reflecting. I haven't figured out a way to stop that and still look. One of the things with a valve seat, now this is one that last I looked was supposed to go in a case, an L or a 148 case. No, shoot, I don't have a pointing device right here with. Yeah, I sort of do. Remember Stadler Mars? Yeah, I still have some of the old stuff. Debbie actually found it in an old dresser of ours that she was looking through, and I said, well, what do you want me to do with that? She said, I don't know, what's your problem? I used to love to do drafting and drawing. Not drafting, actually. Drafting, it was more drawing and making up things, ideas for things to build. Then after a while, it just got to the point where you had to give up and build it. I didn't have time to monkey around. Being in farm equipment, we used to work 60 hours a week, and that was normal. So, anyway, this is a valve seat, and it's, I described before, put in a description on these things. Now, this is an SBI seat. It's SB International. I forgot what the SB stands for. But anyway, when you look up a part number, you'll see on here, you won't see it because it's just too fine. Maybe, no. You can see that there's something there. What it is a number, 1500-1, 1500-1. Now, in the SBI world, that already gives you that vast majority of the time, 1500 is 1.500 is the standard dimension they're expecting you to go by on the outside of this. Now, they built in a certain press fit, usually someplace in the neighborhood of 5,000s, 3 to 5,000s, because some of them vary, and they're not all perfect. Something else to show you with this is, I'll show you the specs here in a minute. Nah, I can't turn the screen around, so we're going to have to do some playing. You see the little shiny point there? There, I'll point to it. That's the seat that's machined at the factory. It's 45 degree. How do I know? Well, I know. I looked up the specs. That's one way. And I'll hopefully be able to show you here in a minute how to look those specs up. But you also see the dark interior there. It's a little rough. Well, the idea of that thing being rough is this is a cast seat. And this is a cast iron seat. You see it's machined slightly in certain spots. Other spots it's not machined internally at all. All right. Now. Oh, there's a spot that's really... So the interior isn't so critical because the outside is 90 degrees to the plane, 90 degrees to the base. So you have a essentially this is square when it starts. The machine, they'll have a piece of cast iron, obviously, hollow, and they'll finish the outside down to whatever diameter they want at that point. And just to show you something else interesting, now battery-operated calipers are, this one's very good, 000. This one, however, has a problem. It's not a critical problem, but it's an annoying one. You see that? It goes -5 far too easily. Sometimes I just close it. And they're susceptible to temperature. So you have to be careful when you buy one. This is a Mac Tool one, the big one. This little one, something I bought at, I think, Napa and Owego. Okay, now I'm measuring the outside here. I have 1.504. Okay, now for some reason it's not reading the half thousands. I know, it's showing 2 now. And that's one of the problems with these. Okay. If you can squeeze this, so you have to be careful. You know, just holding it is enough. So we'll go by 1.504 is the outside diameter. If I turn it, you might get the 1.50, but you have to be careful how you're measuring. A, how tight you squeeze, and B, that you have it flat. Sometimes what you can do is lay it against the back of the caliper and then bring it in lightly until it stops. And I get 1.5035, 1.54, so we're in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 4, and then one time I measured, it's supposed to be by dimensions, okay, this direction, .505 or 4, so it's in the neighborhood of what it's supposed to be. And measure all the way around. When you're close enough, use the specs that are in the book here. Now, I don't know why they don't allow me to turn this thing around. But anyway, you know now that 1500 is 1.5, 1.5 inch outside diameter. If you go by that and bore an 1.5 inch hole, that's what the design of this is to have a proper press fit already built in. Problem. The problem I have is my NEWAY valve seat pocket. Now, both of these companies will tell you this, and if you follow the specs properly, you won't miss. My NEWAY set has a standard for measuring that undersizes the whole 5/1000ths. And you need to be aware of that. Can it fit? In cast iron, it's insane. Now you start to get where you crumble this thing and it can buckle. Especially cast iron, you can run into all kinds of... Cast iron and pressed metal, you can come into some bad problems with it. Now, some of the other metals that are solid and essentially billet machined, you're not going to get so much trouble with it. And an aluminum, 10/1000ths is too high, but you can make it work. Uh-oh, I'm getting a buzz. Gen Sales. Yeah, I bought a manual from them. So anyway, the idea is to have your hole, if it's designed at 1.5, measure it and find out what the outside average is all the way around. And then go to, when you're machining the seat, if you're like me and have a NEWAY kit or anything else, and you're starting out as a machinist, not too competent types. I haven't done one of these in a decade. No, 2 decades almost. Anyway, you're looking for that press fit and cast iron 3 to 5/1000ths. And some places you'll find a chart, and I think SBI has a specific place in here where they will show you that. Oh, look at that. They killed him. Oh, no. I had a window up here that had everything on it, and now they're all gone. Yeah, I know what I did. All right, here we go. I got to find my SBI again. Gen Sales. No, I don't need to find Gen Sales. Got to find my SBI. There it is. We've got Lock and Stitch, SBI, all kinds of places here. So 1.5-1, I had mentioned before, is your specific. Your, how can you say it? It goes into the types, the accessories, the style, the content. In this case, it's just a simple press-in cast iron valve seat. Or cast, it might be cast steel even. Which may have some alloys in it. So 1.500, I just showed you, it's 1.5 inch. The -1 specifically tells you several things about it. One of them is, it's 0.217 on the depth. Now on SBI, I can look this up by application. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, there's your SBI. I'll see if I can get you to follow through. Now I can look by application, or I can go over here by part number. What I learned by part number was an interesting thing that I forget all the time. I have to put in, well, there it is. Can you see that? Okay, we'll go with SB-1. Part type, and this may or may not have to be in there, but we'll go with valve seats, and then we'll do a search. There we go. Also available, I don't know if you can see that, and here also available in powdered metal, which would be a suffix beyond the -1 of PM, and N is also non-magnetic. Now, these things are important to some other people that are doing more critical work. To me, it doesn't mean anything. Powdered metal is different. It's compressed. It's better than cast, but still at the same time, it's somewhat brittle, or can be. And there's your 1.5. It's highlighted, so I can go up here because I'm on the computer. I can't just touch the screen. I forget those things, and here we are. Your angle, 45 degrees. Now your depth, I remember I said it was 0.217. Well, let me do my calculations here. I've got my phone with me too, and we're going to go to the calculator. It's 7 divided by 32 equals 0.21875. So essentially I should have come up with 2.19. I'm going to measure it again, and I've got 2.16 here, so it's an approximation. It's not exact. So what would happen? If I bored to exactly 7/32, this thing would be below deck just a few thousandths, wouldn't it? Wouldn't hurt a thing because it gives you some metal to peen over. Now, you have over here, not actual, but it gives you an idea of what it does look like. And over here are your specs, your 45-degree angle, 7/32 depth, means how deep it goes in the head. There you are. Top to bottom. Your exact OD, 1.5045. We just measured that before, that we're at 1.504. So we're pretty close. Top taper, well, sometimes up here in the top they do some special work above the seat level. And then the ID is 1.25 inches. Now, usually they measure it as 1.25 inches to give you an approximation. I'll measure it here. And it is roughly 1.25 inches. I got one. Because it's rough, it's not actual machine, I'm getting 1.24 something. It could be 6, it could be whatever. So it's very close to being accurate. And again, there we go. Now I got my 0 back. So that's how you can look that. Now another way I can do this is by application. Now, what was I looking up? I was looking up a case, year. Now they'll tell you here specifically, heavy-duty industrial marine tractor applications, set year to all, then select make, and then engine. That's important to know. Now, I'm trying to do this off the cuff like this. We're going to go over here, make. Going to go with, try the one I was, well, I guess we can look this up. We're going to go with case, model all, engine. I'm going to look up, no, in my case it's 164. Now you'll see there's several different types. 8 valve, that's how many valves in the engine. Maybe I should show you another one for the curiosity. Let's go to John Deere, because I'm working on a 40 now, and I had some headaches with this thing because of their designations. John Deere. All right, model all, engine. Now, I know it's a 100.5 cubic inch, right? Because I looked it up on tractordata.com. Going to go to tractors, John Deere farm tractor by model. We're already there. And how much of this you are able to see, but we're going to try and make it palatable for you. All right, now, what am I looking up? I need a John Deere 40. You can put a search in, but quite often I just buzz down through the list until I see 40. There's 50s or 40, 40C. Now if you look carefully here, 40 is here. Follow that across, 23 horsepower, 53 to 55, and that means the 40C is the same machine. So if you're looking for engine parts, it doesn't matter. Now it's rolled on me. We're going to go to a 40. Then I find out here, under John Deere 40, quite a bit of information. And then here, 1.6 liter, 2-cylinder. Well, that's what's important to me. So I go to engine details. What's 1.6 liters? You can either calculate it or quite often look it up on here. 2-cylinder, water-cooled. 100.5 displacement. Now this is on tractordata.com. Can't remember the gentleman's name. I just emailed and would tell him that I've had a ball looking stuff up. Now that you know it's 100.5 cubic inch, you look on here, it's labeled as a V2. But that's the only selection there is. And then when I go to look it up on the search, I come up with John Deere. I don't know why they call it a V2, but at the same time, 1.6 liter, and the valve seats are of the size that you would expect. That's 1 5/8 for the exhaust, and they're 1/812, I think, is 1 11/16. No, 1 13/16. It's right there. So now you already know the numbers of the valve seats you're putting in there. It says 4 valve. Remember before the 4-cylinder said 8 valve. So it's a total on the engine, so you know this one's a 2-cylinder. The V2, that seems kind of odd, but you wouldn't have 100 cubic inches on a pony motor. So that's why I went with the V2 on this one. So that's how you can look up your part numbers in this site. And notice here, model, don't even put it in, part type. If I put it in, it's kind of ridiculous because the valves, keepers, and seats all come up with it. So, now that we've done that, we know how to look this puppy up, and it's a little, I know, it's convoluted. I'm not into this big stuff now of moving chips and going through all the machinations of, producing this. I'm just here to get you some information. Take my glasses off so I can see. Up close, I'm worthless. But we're into the other part where it's semi-demonstration. Now what we have here on top of this is, what I want you to know is, you've got an engine with valve seats in it. The valve seats are bad, but you might have some equipment, or your buddy has some. We have cheap Mexican decaf with, I think, Dunkin' Donuts caffeinated. It's a pretty good mix. Weird. Anyway, well, what we do quite often now, I want you to go to the Steve Morse Engines. We'll talk to you about valve seats in aluminum. Jamsey online, and there's some other racers. What's that fella's name? Anyway, if you go into some of my viewing list, and there's a couple of, I can't remember the guy's name now. He does, well, actually, it's in the title. Performance work in a manual shop, something like that. Older gent, great equipment, good stuff, fun to watch. The guy has a ball doing his work. Now, when they take the valve seats out, they're welding. Now, there's another guy that does a lot of Jeep work, and they will weld these seats internally. This works better in aluminum head because it's safer. Say safer? Yeah. Your weld won't stick to the aluminum. Vaporize it if you're not careful, but it's not going to stick to the aluminum. So if you slip up top, it's probably going to bounce. But they use wire. Some is the easiest and best way to do it. You weld the inside and let it cool, shrinks and stops. Now some of the guys I've seen, especially cast iron, they just put a bead here and a bead there, and they're all done. It'll fall right out, or nearly fall out. So occasionally, if you drive the valve guide, if the valve guide is out, you can get down through there with a little L tool, pop the thing out. They do have tools with spikes. You can poke down through the valve guide area, put the spikes out, get them underneath it, and pop it up out of there. Occasionally, now the other one in cast iron, do not do this in aluminum. I haven't done it to find out, but they have like a lady foot, but a heavy duty, that gets underneath the edge of this and pulls it out. And then cast iron, you have to be sure where you are, because that hook will get in there and tear the cast iron up. It's harder than the cast. It'll grab the seat and pull it out. What are they depending on? They're depending on the seat being worn and being able to flex when you start to pry that thing out of there. So those are two methods to get this thing out. Another method is Jamsey online likes better than anybody else because of the tooling they have. It makes it simple. They actually set up their valve seat pocket cutter to cut down through the valve seat, similar to what they do with a sleeve. Just cut the puppy out. I did that on a John Deere head from start to finish. It was beautiful. I looked for what the head was, the dimensions, and the valve seats that I was replacing. It looked cast because of the old wear that was in it. It really did look like it was, the intake was cast in the head. And I was mowing down through the head, and all of a sudden stopped. It wouldn't cut anymore. I got another couple thousandths to go. What's going on here? In the bottom was this little 5 thousandths thick plate of metal. It had cut down through the valve seat, hit the bottom, because where the chamfer is, it's on the bottom. It makes it a smaller diameter, and it just hit that and turned it. And it sat there spinning. It was the coolest thing you ever saw. And then I took a close look, and I barely touched the actual wall itself. It was still some black in there. I was able to take a brand new set of seats with 3.5 thousandths and drive them right in. So that does work. Some of us that have the knockout kits and similar, the NEWAY, the pocket cutters, you have to set everything up to do it. It's kind of tedious. TCM 25 I used years ago, I had an air table. So you'd set your thing up level, then you'd level your valve guides. In other words, you get your head level, because most of your diesels and heavy-duty engines are straight-in valves. So if something goes wrong, the piston can push the valve up, not bend it sideways. And because the valves are heavier, they'll do far more damage. And what they will do is you level your head, and then they have a level for the guides, get it leveled. And if they're off slightly, like some of your V8s, they have a minor canting and angle to them, then you can go down through and use your level to set the intake and then the exhaust. And what we used to do there was you just punch it. You could bore that sucker out of there so fast it'd blow your mind. But you still needed a good valve guide in there to do it. But I don't have one of those anymore, but it was fun to use it while I had it. It's like a huge radial arm drill press. And if I had a radial arm drill press, I'd have no need for another valve set. Bridgeport, yeah. And the radial arm drill press will do as much or more than a Bridgeport, but you have to be careful. It's not as heavy duty, but it's far more heavy duty than anything else. You're in the shop, right? Let's go backwards. You're in the shop. You welded the seat. Now, I've told you the general ways to get the sucker out of here. But you're in your own home shop. You can replace the valve seats. Well, think about this one for a minute. Make sure you have a good caliper. Now, a dial caliper and a vernier caliper, don't kid yourself. They are better and more accurate, more consistent than this will be. They are. However, one of these you can recalibrate it. So if you're out there 30, 40 degrees hotter or colder than, yeah, you can calibrate this where you can't the others. Vernier in particular, you have to know it, but they're more accurate than the dial. Dial's more accurate than this. And this recalibrates so your average is better. You're going to like these because the numbers are big to read. Now, to take your valve seat out, let's just say you've welded it. All right? Welded or pried it, you got your valve seat out. Well, yeah, but now, this is the funny part that I've seen. It might cost you a couple bucks. Good coffee. Anyway, you're going to put a valve guide, clean out your valve guide, and put either some type of valve pilot in there. Wait a minute, that might cost you 50 bucks. Maybe a little more. But get yourself a pilot. You know what the guys are doing anymore to put the valve seats in? This is the scary part. I watched it. You can either buy the driver set for it, which would be relatively expensive, or buy the parts for it. That's one of the beauties about NEWAY manufacturing. If you call NEWAY manufacturing, tell them what you have, they'll get you the driver and the head to drive it over a 3/8 pilot. Yeah. You can buy the pilot from them, an expanding pilot or a tapered pilot. I'd buy the expanding in this case, unless you plan on cutting valves. And you can buy small valve seat cutting outfits from them for reasonable money, and they are accurate. Don't tell me they're not. What did I just tell you about the seat pocket cutter? It's ridiculously simple. It'll do flat heads, F heads, whatever. Unless you've got a seat that's severely inset in the head, it can do it, put most of your valve seats in there. And if it's severely set in the head, like you have in the case of power cell engines or F heads, well, then you have to take it to somebody with a radial arm drill press, or if you have a very accurate drill press as it is. So it doesn't matter. But you can buy the outfit to do that from NEWAY. And by the way, if you're going to just cut valve seats in an F head or a deep power cell diesel, the NEWAY set's beautiful for it. You can reach right down in there. And where were we at? Driving these in. I watched a guy take, and this is no lie, he took the puck this is true story, an OTC puck for taking bearings off of shafts, where you would put your puller jaws over the bearing, and you put the puck in the middle of a hollow shaft or the end of a shaft you're trying to protect. He took the puck, laid it on top of the valve seat, put the valve seat as parallel as he could get it, and then just put a big old block of handle of iron on top of that and drove the seat in until it bottomed. And he'd been doing that for years. So if you want to do your own work, I don't recommend it that way, but it can work that way. That's right. A puller puck. For a puller normally pushes the center screw on. He turned that over, put it on there, and drove it in. I saw another guy that used bushing drivers. No lie. If this thing is going to be at or slightly above surface, or if you can get the right bushing driver to pilot in here and have the right diameter outside, just slightly smaller, start with one slightly bigger and finish with it smaller to get it down in there, because this is going to set below the surface a thousandth or two. They're actually doing that with no pilot, just eyeballing and doot, doot, doot. Now, you're driving the seat in, 3 pounds. You heard me. You can do it with a 2-pound hammer, 24 ounce, or 24 is what, pound and a half. You want a 2-pounder minimum, 32 ounce. That's what I would say. Others drive with 24s, but I would go with a 2-pounder, maybe a 3. Going to give that, line it up. Especially if you got a pilot, your handle's already lined up. You've tapped it up and down, the seat's lined up. And if you're careful, you took the edge of a file and cleaned the edge off, and then cleaned out the whole pocket, and then drive that rascal in. You'll feel it pap, pap, bang. Now what Jamsey Online recommends is, before you do the final set, take a pick, scrape around the inside of it, and blow some air around there to be sure there's nothing else left behind. Don't scrape hard with that 90-degree pick, but make sure it's cleaned out, and then hit the final 5/10 thousandths down, and you're in. So in other words, you can weld out your seat, pry out your seat, or a combination thereof, depending on how big or small your seat is. And you may only need to weld on 2 points, 3 points, or 4. You weld long, not up and down, long, with a diameter. Why? Because the bead's longer and will shrink the diameter. Some of you may try one bead and it'll fall out. Golden. But you have to let it cool. Once it's out, you drive the next one in. But in between now, we've got the out, we've got the in. In between, you may not be able to do it with this. There is a set of calipers. You can buy these dirt cheap on Amazon. I just bought a set of them, not even for this type of work. But a set of calipers, similar to your compass, with the edges outward, points outward. They go down in the hole, tap to the outside, and even the pointed ones, they go in there, they touch, take your caliper and measure your seat on the outside diameter, and figure out what the press fit is. If you put it down in there and you can't just plain push it or take the driver and tap it down in there, you're going to be good. Now, say you drove it out and you go to put it back in, and you're, now there is a high temperature, Loctite. Now we're into another area. You want to know what your press fit is? High temperature Loctite will work in the seats. If you go to Silver Seal, there's a Seal Lock product, fluid weld, and that's high temperature, 2,000-3,000 degrees polymer, and that's one of the things they're putting on a lot of these seats. A little bit swiped inside, a little bit in the outside, drive the thing in, and when you get down to the bottom, it's going to splatter, and some of you are going to say, that'll hydraulic lock it. And it can. So make sure your final drive, it splats, clean out what you can, and then give it another 1 or 2 taps. And then you'll be down to the bottom. Then it'll be glued in. Now, let's say you're trying to save a buck. This tractor goes to parades. You're not going to antique plowing demonstrations or anything. And you might plow your garden once in a while, maybe some snow. You're not doing anything heavy. You go to put the seat in, and you've got it glued, and it drives in a little easy. Crap, now what? Don't take it back out. But don't take too long. One of the things I've done that seems to work very well is take a punch, or a chisel, I should say. Say this is the bottom of your chisel. round it off. Yep, keep it nice and wide. 1/2 inch is good. 3/8 is a little too narrow. You gotta get it up about 1/2 inch, depending on your seat size. If you have a smaller seat like this one, 3/8 might be good. 2 things you can do. Briggs & Stratton recommends it in aluminum, and I have done this with tremendous success. I did it in one engine where the seat was actually over, I think, 20 thousandths in further than normal. It pounded itself in the block. We put a short block in. I cleaned the block up, took it home. I did. Now what did I do? I put the seat and the valve, and got it, ground the end of the valve off, got it down in there tight, held it tight, and I didn't grind the valve completely off at the bottom. Now it's Briggs & Stratton, so that's the only thing you can do. On another machine, you put your valve and valve spring on there, you get it in tight, but you need the valve spring. And then I actually took the punch and peened around the outside of the valve seat, just out from the valve itself, about a 16th, or valve seat at 1/16 of an inch. Tapped around the outside of the valve and actually peened it. Now, another thing that I have done in the past that a fellow named Chuck Habrick used to do up in Amsterdam, New York, because we'd get heads where the seats were cracked, and he says all they've done is take a prick punch, move back a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, and stake it in 3 places around the valve seat. And they've never had a valve seat fall out. And these are old Oliver engines and Alice Chalmers and others with a case with a power cell engine where the exhaust valve is up in the head, and they tend to crack by the seats. Well, they've been peening them in and holding them in place. I've gone all the way around on aluminum and cast iron some, and both seem to work because I haven't had a valve seat fall out that I know of yet. So, and one of them I put in an 18-horse Kohler head. They're having trouble, and the valve seats in an 18-horse Kohler head actually have a ledge. This is the top, at the bottom they actually have another ledge underneath it, so that when they mold the head, the seat can't fall out. It's molded to it. But what do you do when the seat loosens? You can't peen it. I said the only way to save it, I had to bore out 2 big holes. Drove that puppy down in there with 7 thousandths play. Never heard another word from him. So this is stuff that you can do at home carefully. Now for me, you're not going to do that, but if you have an aluminum head with a loose seat, that can work. Are you going to find that in a tractor? No. But to back up to what we're doing, you're going to weld the seat, or if it's semi-loose or however, I've seen some others also, foreigners in particular, they'll take a chisel and grind it like a rivet chisel. How can I say that? Well, there's the tip, and there will be the, how can you describe it? There will be the chisel point. It's a rivet breaker, only tapered on one side. They turn it upside down so the flat is underneath the seat, and they'll tap it with a hammer. You're taking the seat out, so if everything goes well, you're on the other side of the seat here. You're going underneath the seat here, and you tap it up, and then put the chisel under a little further, tap it up. You have to be careful. Once you've got it moving, keep it moving and pop it out of there. It's the same idea as the pry bar. It's, well, why don't I take a rolling foot pry bar and try that? Well, it's wide. You'll need to grind that roll foot at the same arc as the seat is, or close. Get underneath it, and then you might be able to pry that rascal out, laying it on the other side of the valve seat so you can get it out. Once it's a cast iron only, and once it's out, now you can do your driving to get a new seat in there. So in other words, you could, John Deere can do it easily. I don't know as the other companies do. You can walk in, order valve seats from Deere's and valves, put it all together. Now you're going to say, well, all I'm going to do is lap them in and let it fly. That's up to you. But you have 2 problems with diesels that are flat tops. One of them is seating, because it's not going to be as accurate. It's been pounded in, the head's been moved, and the seats are moved. The other one is either the valve recession or valve proud. In other words, valve height above the deck. There's a spec for that. And if you put new seats in and all you're going to do is lap them, don't buy your new valves yet. Take your old valves, have them refaced, or if they're clean and you're going to lap them in anyway, drop them in there and find out what your actual protrusion or depth is. Find it by the spec. You've got a way to do it. What do you mean? You can take another flat machined piece, like a very thick feeler gauge or something similar, lay it right over top of the valve, measure it from that down. Now take the thickness of that and subtract it, that plate. Now you know your valve recession. And if you say, well, yeah, but what if it isn't? Well, it might not be perfect. Turn it over. Measure it again. Subtract your flat bar again. And if you come up within a few thousandths, the middle. So if it's supposed to be 35, and one way you get 36, and the other way you get 34, you're at 35, aren't you? So you don't have to be perfect. You do have to be careful. So I figured I'd throw that one out there for you folks. I know I'm not high deck, I'm not Jamsey Online, I'm not all these other guys. But I want you to understand that I've been doing this stuff for a few years. I started on my own doing this about 1990. No, it was before. 93 or 94, I think, was when I started pulling engine stuff in. And ended up going through a mess a few years later. I got financially screwed several ways. And I had to back out of it and come home. And when I came from the shop I was in, brought stuff home, there was things I had to go back, lost the lease. But I was able to keep enough equipment and go into NEWAY deeper that I was able to actually go back to almost everything else I was doing with a platen sander, the NEWAY valve seat system. I didn't have a VFR valve facer then, but this time when I was retiring, Debbie says, why don't you buy the stuff you need? Just go out there and start doing the work you love. You got enough tractors to work on, let alone anything else. True story. So I have NEWAY's valve pocket cutter to put the seats in. I have the rebuilder's kit and a little bit more to cut your 2 or 3. Now, you can do your 5 angle on here. NEWAY has the equipment available. 3 is more than enough. The only reason to do 3 when you have a valve seat is if your valve seat is too, how can I say it? The working width is too much. So you get one that you want 1 5/16 inches, but you got 1 1/4 inch, and it'll work. On most of your tractor engines, it doesn't matter. You got an old antique, who cares? Put it in, do your 3 angle valve job. Well, now you can run your seat up and down and put it anywhere you want. The lower part of your seat is limited by the internal diameter. So all your valves on there, and your seat hits it. Correct? Well, if your seat's straight up and down, that's it. You can't move this much. The only thing you're doing is grinding into it and changing where the top edge is, because that's where the extra metal is. So you're going to try and get your valve width from the seat base up to here. As you grind a valve off, it's going to go slowly deeper. So that can help you as well. And you'll find a majority of these applications, you're looking at anywhere between 50 and 125 thousandths valve seat width. I think in my John Deere that I'm working on now and another one, they want someplace in the neighborhood of 70 valve seat width, which, believe it or not, isn't as much as you would think. So let me clean this up. And this thing's already gone -5 just sitting here. Zero it again. Okay, 216. Well, that's what 216 looks like. 7/32. Let me take this down to 70 thousandths, which is difficult, by the way. But 70 to 80 is a very common figure. Ooh. There it is. Oh, that's 71. Oops. This one actually moves quite well. I have to be careful. There it is. There's your 70 thousandths. What's the valve seat width that I have here? Now remember, I showed you that this thing already has a seat cut on it. What's its width? It's a little less than 70 thousandths. They're quite narrow. Yeah, I'm going to say in the 40 thousandths range. So you can already see a fair seat in there. Well, double that, and you're in the neighborhood of your tractors, and that gives you enough space. So if you're going to lap it in, that's one of the problems you're going to have. It's just plain lapping a new seat. If it's not cut far enough, you're going to have trouble. They say, why did you go through all of that? Well, to let you know that there's a lot of stuff you can do at home. So you call NEWAY and tell them what machine you have. Tell them what size your valves are. Give them an idea of how much space there is in your combustion chamber, if there's any need at all. In a gas engine, the combustion chamber is in the head, and diesel, it's in the piston. Not all diesels, but the power cell, they're in the head. So, but anyway, they have power cell and pre-combustion chambers. 656 Internationals, the old Alice Chalmers diesels, D19, D17, WD45. Olivers, the older ones, the 100 series, 1800, well, not the 1800. What the 1850 had a Perkins in it. So it might be the 1800, 1600, 1700. Some of the 1750s, 1650s had power cell engines in them. What is it? And power cell here, injector there, straight across on the head. Piston going up and down. But those are cooler running engines, and still, you can put a valve seat in there, clean them up. And the power cell and pre-combustion chamber engines aren't quite so critical as others. But your valve in depth or protrusion is still relatively important. So those are the things you can look at if you want. Like I say, you can replace your seats and lap your valves in, check your dimensions. And as I've said it before a dozen times, you need one. Get your measurements right. Now, what's the other thing? You just saw me do two things in there. On the computer, let's go with another one I want to show you. Let's see if we can get this right. Good. Now, I'm going to close out of SB International. That gives you quite a few specs here. As you can see, there you go. You can highlight them if you want. No, I'm going to close that one out. TractorData.com. Now, who does this one? I can't remember his name. Pete. Not Pete Larson. Oh, come on, Pete. Isn't your name here? No. Oh, there it is. Peter Easterlin, owner, author. Peter at TractorData.com. You can email him if you want. But, you know, to be honest, I'd say leave the guy alone. Just go to his Tractor Data. Now, what's the other one? I went to Gen Sales. I'm going to try and get this one for you. It's getting a little difficult to see what I do and don't have here. But anyway, I went to Gen Sales, and here it is. It's loading, ding. And there, over here, my engine specs. Basic engine specs. Your oil up here, what takes quarts, and bore, stroke, displacement. That's how I found it. The displacement to go to Peters to find out information there. But there's your gasoline, your tappet, clearance, 12 cold. All of your specs are going to be in this area. Transmission. These are your basic specifications, but you go to Gen Sales and some of the others, farmmanuals.com. And let's see, where was I? 1010. Oh, okay, here we go. You're still looking at things where you can lubricate. But you go to these sites. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Waiting for it to catch up. I'm looking for 1010. Okay, 160. Yeah, we're nowhere near 1010. Let's get it up here. $145.16. These are page numbers from apparently a copied John Deere manual. You can get a paper manual from these guys. Okay, 130.15. We're still going. I remember 1010 was one of the places I was looking for something. 110.10 fuel system. And we're starting to get into carburetor, cooling system. $80. Pretty sure it was 1010. I was looking at engine specifications, internal. There's your governor I just went past. Camshaft, cylinder block. It's all stuff that's important for you to know. Yeah, I'm not going to get too critical here because you need to go look it up yourself. Group 35, there's your camshaft, your internals of the engine. They even tell you how to change your camshaft bushings and what you need to do it with. Instructions. So that goes back to one of the points that I had before. Before you even work on this stuff, you need, well, there's your cylinder measuring. Okay? Snap gauges, simple and relatively inexpensive, and you can use your caliper for it. It's not horrendously accurate as a regular micrometer, but look at all this stuff. So when I go back and I'm talking to people, you know, one of the considerations I've always had is the first step in troubleshooting that other companies forget to put in there, but I hate to say that it was John Deere, but John Deere did it first. There's your pistons, your dipsticks. Now we're into your cylinder head. And they'll even in here tell you how to replace your valve seats and your valve guides. It's all in here. I don't think these things had seats from the factory. Most all these old guys were cast iron in the head, and they would induction harden the valve seat. But as you can see, your specifications, your teardown, it's in the manual, and I can't help you any other way. It's in the manual. You've got to go there. You have to have it. This one was about $50, which is more than they have been. I've had a lot of these for some of the more popular machines other than a 40 John Deere like this one is. $25, $30. Oh, by the way, this is Finger Lakes, my happy place. Hosmer. It's not the greatest mug, but it's been a good one. The top was terrible. The mug itself was pretty good. So anyway, it's coming up on 50 minutes here. I just wanted to give an idea for some of you that like to go out there and play. There was a knockout kit. I watched a guy just do the same thing. Pry the seats out, drive another one in, and put new seats in the cylinder head in the shop. Nobody in the shop realized that we could do that except the owner of the shop. Nobody else wanted to do it. And then one of the former employees came back and he pulled out the knockout kit. We knew it was there. We didn't know what it was for. No instructions with it. So they took the knockout kit and he changed the seats in a Perkins 6-cylinder engine easily. That would have been nice to know. Well, now here I am doing it many years later. Well, actually, I did it 10 years later at that point from that outfit. Not even 10, but we'll go with 8, 9, 10 years. And I was doing it with the NEWAY kit. Now, NEWAY does not sell that same kit anymore. If you ask them to build you one, they might build the kit. And I'm here to tell you that the accuracy, you wouldn't think so until you work with it, but the accuracy is insane for something so simple. The biggest expense is it needs a heavy drive motor to run the cutter. Theirs is a better system. It's up on a stand. It's a speed-controlled motor. But, you know, you probably, because some of these other companies, you know what they do it with? A doggone heavy half-inch drill. That's their power source. So you could put a driver on there, set the thing on there with a half-inch drill, and just be careful of your pressure. Hang the drill on a spring so that all you're doing is holding the drill. You're not pressing the seat. And then there's a little feed mechanism on there that you bump with your hands. And if you set the stop properly, put the seat in there. The cutter is on the cast. Put your seat in there. Put the stop collar down. Lock it. Pull the seat out. Cut it till it stops. It's not difficult, but you need to run it slow to be able to cut down in the cast without causing much trouble. It's a simple system. If you buy it without the driver head, I can't imagine that it's all that much money. So, but then again, when I bought it 30 years ago, the thing was $1,800. And I already had the valve set and the pilots that you're going to need to go with it. And I had the power head. So it was, for me, it was like a perfect fit. So just recommendations. If I were you and you're an semi-experienced mechanic and you understand, I'd replace the seats in many machines, even if I had to have somebody else do the final valve job. And if it was also me again, go out there and there are so many valve seat grinders available. I have the VFR there, but I have an old Black & Decker. I think I only paid a couple of $100 for the thing, 30 years ago. And it was 30 years old then. It hasn't been used much, so it's still running quite good. I just faced off the back end of a couple of valves with it the other day. But you can get snap-ons and quick ways, and I don't know if Rattler had one. Knockout has them. There's 3 or 4 different companies that you can buy. Winona Van Norman. What was one of them? They say try this with a Sioux. Now Sioux had an excellent valve grinder. However, the tail end of every single valve had to be dressed because it was a cone on the back side. The Black & Decker is a collet that would grab 2 places in the valve right on the stem. Well, the Sioux was a good system, but you had to clean the back end of the valve off every time to build a chamfer on it to set in that cone. And once that was centered, your gold in the back, you set it in, the front collar, your golden, grinds well. If you didn't set that rear collar, your valve could, then you had a mess. I almost ruined 2 valves trying to learn how to use the machine, and even after that every once in a while the thing would just go off the reservation, so to speak. But it was a beautiful unit. So look all those up, see what you can come up with. And I have never seen forgive me. NEWAY, forgive me. There's this thing, there are 2 of them there. For valve seat cutting, don't buy the motor. For the pocket cutting, you need something to drive. But there is I forgot what they call it, but it's a folding handle to drive your valve seats that's better than the T-handle. Much better. I mean, 5 times better. It's not even close. I have 2 of them, I think. I bought one for a mobile kit and one for in the shop, which was kind of dumb in the end result. And the other is a Gizmatic. You can take valves that are 30 degrees and 45 degrees, and it's a hand deal. It's beautiful. Sets in a vise, any simple vise. And the cutter slides. You put the valve in the V-block. The vise starts grabbing the valve, but not completely. Just about snug. Take the valve and shove it down into the seat, turn it a little, and unlock it. And it has a feed mechanism. You start turning the cutter, and you turn the little handle and feed it. It does a perfect job on valves. Perfect. If you want to lap them in. So, to reconnect, you can buy your valve seat cutters and everything from NEWAY inexpensively. Your Gizmatic, it'll do a beautiful job on the face of the valve. So for $1,000, you can do almost all of this at home. And buy it piecemeal. I highly, if you're restoring tractors in particular, some lawnmower work here and there, I highly recommend any of this, especially from NEWAY. They work great. You just, there's no way. I think in the lawnmower side, though, you have trouble. The valves are too small for the Gizmatic, but I haven't used anything that small yet. Just something to think about. But NEWAY may have another alternative for you. But if you just replace the valve, lap the valve in. Because as you'll find out from Jamsey and Steve Morris Engines and a bunch of others and the antique guys, antique is not so critical, but you find out from all of them, brand spanking new valve comes in. Yeah, it's 5 or 10 thousandths run out. And you're like, what? Why? They get through grinding it, throw it in a tub. I've only seen 1 or 2 cases where the stem was dinged enough I had to clean them up on a new valve with a file. So I try to grind all the valves I can to avoid that, but for small engines, just buy the dang valve, lap it, and put it in. But if you can get the Gizmatic to work because you're doing larger stuff, I'd buy the Gizmatic immediately. It's NEWAY NEWAY Equipment, I think, or NEWAY Manufacturing in Corunna, Michigan. That's Corunna, Michigan. They are well worth your time, well worth the effort. You can look them up online, and you talk to the people there that get you what you want from way back. My VFR 1000, I called them and gave them the serial number. They told me who originally purchased it was a vocational outfit out there in Michigan, 1989. So I said, how did you get your hand on that? And I said, I don't know. Somebody had it online for sale. I've been looking for one for 25 years. I finally found one. Spent the money for it. Too much, because I had to buy collets and everything else to go with it. But when I did, oh man, I did some valves for this John Deere. Smooth as silk. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Little 3M pad. It'll shine like you can't get a ground valve to shine unless you do use a 3M pad. So no oil involved, nothing. But you have to be careful. It'll chatter. You have to be careful. So do it. Spend the money. If you got the money, spend it. Have the fun. You be the one that does this. Next thing you know, you'll be making a little bit of money from your neighbors now and then. For me, no, I'm just trying to get enough money so I can fix my stuff. Catch you later. And remember, peace out. Vote for freedom. An election's coming up where people are trashing each other left and right. A discovery came in the other day, and I want to post this on the end because I'm a religious political guy in faith Jesus Christ. You're going to hear that once in a while on all of these. Somebody just posted on here the other day, they said all the voting throughout the United States in the 2020 election, all of the in-person walk-in voting machine voting, even electronic, went alarmingly into a large Trump kitty. They said even blue states went for Trump. Not all of them, but a vast majority of the states in the United States, especially in the rural and suburban areas, went Trump. Huge. Said the only way that this clown that's in there now won was the mail-in fraud voting. And get this, we already know that almost every single one of the Dominion voting machines did weighted voting. Trump was 0.85, so we never got a full vote out of anybody's vote. And 1.25 or 1.15, depending on how you calculate it, went to Biden. So for Biden, you throw in 4 votes, he got more than 4 votes. For Trump, 4 votes went in, and he didn't get 4 votes. And he overwhelmingly won in in-person voting. Be careful what you wish for. I don't care if you're on the left or the right on one hand, because what we're looking at in D.C. is the swamp. And what we're looking at in Albany is communism and Nazism. We need to vote back for the freedom. The freedom where you can be a raving lunatic and go build Utah in your own world. The rest of us don't have to accept it. But you have the freedom to do that. And if we want to build a religious compound someplace away from the world and just come out once in a while for the support and sustenance we need, we can do that. That's the original freedom. Go color your hair or pull your ears out or whatever you want in your neck of the woods. Or in your city. We'll go do our thing over here, but we're all on the border. From many comes one. So there has to be a certain amount of thought to freedom that we all need. Remember that this next election. Catch you later.